Hello students, here is Professor Pliny Monteiro, and this video is focused in the analysis of the segments at the level of customers, also known as micro-level segmentation. And also I'm going to discuss some global segments of customers that can be very useful for targeting when you look to different countries in the world. And this step represents the last one to develop your market segments when we think about international market. And in that case, we have the task here is to develop segments of customers in each qualified country or even segments that exist across countries. To do so, you need to use microdata, so you need data from customers, you need data of responses of customers or surveys with customers, and or even you can use existing research in each of these countries. And using this micro level data, then you'll be able to create the segments of customers. And as usual, you can use many traditional variables to create the segments of customers, like demographics, geographical variables, buyer behavior, lifestyle and psychographics, and finally, customer attitudes, beliefs, and intentions. So all these variables need to be measured at the level of at each customer, at a sample of customers, and using research conducted by your firm or secondary data that come from usually from sources, governmental sources. And using this kind of data, you'll be able to use the same techniques presented before to create some segments of customers. And with this data, then you will be able to see the size of the segments, their behavior, and also their assumptions. And what's behind this task? First of all, you need to create the segments of countries, and of course, in each country, you can select different products to serve within these countries. And within each country, you're going to have different segments of customers, and the size of the segments will vary from country to country. For instance, we may think about age groups as a way to segment your market. And thinking about this variable, you'll be able to see that the age groups are not equal when you compare different countries. So within each country segment that you created, you have different characteristics of these segments of customers within each of these countries. One way to simplify this analysis when we compare segments in different countries in the world is try to search some global customer segments, basically some general categories of customers that can be found in different countries in the world. And with these previous categories, you'll be able to compare the segment sizes and segments profiles in different countries that you're targeting. The basic idea is that these global segments will carry some similarities in every country in the world, give some factors that are the objective conditions, some ideologies and aspirations behind these groups, and also take into account their consumption practices. And usually we think about the global segment because these segments of customers will exist in many different countries and not only in just one or a few countries in the world. So knowing the main types of global segments can help you in choosing a micro-level segmentation in each country that you're operating. One very popular category of global segments are named as bottom of pyramid, or BOP. And basically, we're thinking about very poor people that lives usually in underdeveloped countries and other characteristics of them. Basically, they don't have a lot of cultural capital. Usually they are not so educated, and they usually work, they have manual labor. Usually they also live in poor infrastructure areas, and they lack many products and services that usually we can find in other in developed countries or in other areas, even in the underdeveloped countries. But basically, even though they are not that rich, they represent a larger portion of the world. So we are talking about between 4 to 5 billion customers in the world, 70% of the world's population. And the sum of GDP of this group is huge. Basically, we can say that this number is very close to the GDP of Japan, Germany, France, United Kingdom, and Italy combined. And basically, 70% of these bottom of pyramid are now located in 9 countries: China, India, Mexico, Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, Turkey, South Africa, and Thailand. And what's behind the customer behavior of this group? Many people believe that this group don't care about brand, but they have a conscience to brand equity. The point is that sometimes they cannot afford more expensive brands, but they have what we can call as value conscious. So basically, they will try to get the best they can with the money they have. And also, they are highly connected, even in underdeveloped countries. They connected through internet and applications like WhatsApp. And also, they are very prone to accept new technologies like Uber. And one thing that's behind the consumer behavior of this group, basically, they are used to see consumption as a way to be recognized as a citizen. So they believe that since it's not easy for them to have access to different types of products and services, when they have this capability to buy new technology, buy microelectronics, to travel around, they can see that this is what will let them to belong to society. And in that way, we may see that for them, consumption is a very important aspect to be recognized as a part of any society. Of course, many companies use this knowledge to target this group in order to use their to foster, to promote their products and services, and let people have this feeling of belonging to the society as a whole.
Joining me today is Professor C.K. Prahalad, author of The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid and Professor of Corporate Strategy at the University of Michigan. Well, welcome, Professor Prahalad. And
nice to be here, Will.
Thank you for joining us today. For those who are not familiar with your work, could you take a moment and summarize how companies can do well by doing good in their efforts to serve the bottom of the pyramid consumers?
I think the starting point is approximately 5 billion people have been below the radar screen of the large organized sector, including multinational corporations. So the question is, what if we turn these 5 billion people into active micro consumers and micro producers so they can effectively engage in global commerce and get the benefits of global commerce? The basic premise is these 5 billion people, if they are mobilized, organized, this could be the next engine of enormous growth around the world, and the companies would benefit, therefore they will do well. At the same time, they would dramatically improve the quality of life and access to goods and services, and certainly the capacity for getting a better livelihood. Therefore, they'll also do good.
Professor, you recently co-authored a paper for the Harvard Business Review in which you explain your theory of co-creation and the benefits of cooperation between corporations and NGOs in their efforts to reach the bottom of the pyramid.
So I think whether you start from Seattle or Davos, people have started assuming that civil society and the large company necessarily must have an adversarial relationship. obviously they have very different ideological starting points. But increasingly, if you look at what is happening, the large company, in order to access uh, the bottom of the pyramid consumers and also to mobilize them as producers of goods and services, needs to get the benefit of NGOs who have local knowledge and local trust. So both of them now seeing that there is a value in convergence between the global standards, global knowledge, global scale, and local trust, local understanding, and local responsiveness.
Professor, what do you think is the single biggest impediment to the adoption of ICT in India?
But ICT's biggest impediment for me is we are not building rapidly viable, sustainable economic models which are self-sustaining. Either it is subsidies from the government or CSR or purely philanthropy-oriented NGOs. They can all experiment, but if you want to sustain, if you want to scale rapidly, we have to build economic models. Technology is an integral part of what happens, but there's only one part.
In closing, is there any particular word of advice you'd like to give to a policymaker or the leader of an NGO or maybe an enterprising startup about how they might address bringing ICT to the bottom of the pyramid?
I think we have to start by asking ourselves, how do we democratize opportunities and how do we democratize commerce? And what it really means is providing same information, same opportunities for people across the world, whether they're rich or poor, rural or urban. And ICT provides a vehicle for doing it. ICT is not an end in itself. It is the social and economic transformation that ICT can enable that makes it interesting. So I think ICT has a huge role to play.
Dr. Prahalad, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, delighted to be here.
Thank you.
Another important group is the new middle class, and this group represents people that are now that once was in the bottom of pyramid, but then they achieved better conditions of life and better access to products and services, and then they are looking for improvement in their way of life, in their lifestyle, by the consumption. And the annual per capita income is something between $4.3 thousand dollars to $8,000.2 dollars. And also, according to but if you use the number of World Bank, it's something like a little bit less than that. And of course, they have more discretionary money. What is that? They have more money to spend on other things that they want. So bottom of pyramid customers usually spend a lot of money just with basic requirements for life, like food, like housing, and so on. But new middle classes can make more choices for different products since they have more money that are not being used to the basic spendings and basic expenses in life. And also this group belongs to managers, to people with some education, and these groups are the ones that are really aspiring and planning to have great achievements in the future. Depending on the measure, this segment represents between 10 and 50% of the population, of the world population, and they have also a huge spending power, and they are growing very fast in countries like China and India. And what's behind their customer behavior? They believe in meritocracy, so believe that if they achieve some place in society, they deserve that. And of course, consumption is an important way to to increase their self-esteem and reinforce the way that they view themselves. They have a lot of self-reliance because they feel that they leave a certain groups and now they have better conditions, and they believe that this is a result of their own actions. And also they embrace the West values like individualism, capitalism, and competition, and so on. And also they embrace consumerism. So basically they have more alternatives for choices, and they use their consumption as a way to reinforce their lifestyle. And of course, they are more integrated than bottom of pyramid, since they can talk with people in different parts of the world, they can travel around, or even move to a new country to achieve a specific goal. These numbers represent the bottom of pyramid during some years in Brazil. So we can see that by 2005, we have a lot of people in class D and E, and by 2011, this changed a little bit. Of course, this was the result of some politics from Brazilian government, including the way that they define the classes A, B, and C, and so on. And of course, this does not represent a real change in the long-term conditions of life. And this is especially true if you think about what happened after the crisis of 2004. And before that, they were consuming a lot of new products. They are traveling around, buying television, fridges, and so on. So buying a lot of new products. But after some period of time, after the crisis, a lot of factors reduced their conditions of life, and many of these that was considered in the middle classes, in the middle classes, returned to be poor again. And of course, in more recent years, with the crisis affecting us in the last years, things are even worse than that. And of course, many people that was in the middle classes are now returning to become bottom of pyramid. It's so sad, but unfortunately it's true. And another very important global consumer segment is the mass affluent. Basically, these are people that are very close to be the richest ones in our global society, and they have an average household income of $130,000 a year, and they can invest a lot of money in new assets like housing and like financial assets and so on. Usually these are well-paid professionals or small business operators, and in the US basically they are a little bit older than the average, like two-thirds in with more than 55 years old. And in China, in India also, they are increasing the number of mass affluent, and usually they are very young and tax saving. So basically, they like to experiment new technologies, and they like to use innovation in their daily lives. And in the US, this group represents between 11 and 20% of the population, and they represent 45% of the entire consumption in the country. In China, it's basically 2.5% of the population, and they represent 75% of the entire consumption. And in Mexico, 2% of population representing 12% of the consumption. And what's behind their behavior? So they are the main target for luxury products. So they buy luxury cars, bags, watches, and also sympathy offers like dogs accessories. And they are the ones that really are connecting in the newest ways to make payments. And for instance, they have a huge presence on Twitter and other social media. And also, they are the ones that look for new products, look for fashion, for things, new ideas that they can use to buy new products and use that as a symbol of their status. With that, I finished the content of this video where I presented the importance of making an analysis of the segments at the level of customers and also how you can use global customers to make this task more effective. And that's it, students. See you in the next video. Bye.